Hello, this is a review of basic color theory. Color can be described using 3 dimensions, and those 3 dimensions are hue, i.e. where does it fall on the rainbow, although it is slightly different from that, and we will talk a little bit more about the difference between rainbow and the complete color spectrum in my upcoming class, the color wheel. The second dimension is chroma. Low chroma colors are gray. High chroma colors are what we would call very bright or colorful or vivid or saturated. And the third dimension of color is tone. Tone goes all the way from white, which is a low value of tone, to completely black, blacker than this, which would be a high value of color. And these 3 dimensions can be used to describe any single color in order to give it a place in the color space. So for example, if we have a color like this one's pretty easy to tell because it's what we call a color. I can easily look at this and say it's yellow. If I were to ask, like, where is this in the rainbow, you'd be like, yeah, that belongs in the rainbow, it's yellow. And that's because it is a bright yellow. Now, if I look at how dark this color is, it is not very dark, but yellow doesn't get very dark. So even though it's not very dark, I'm still going to put it in this second container here because it's not as pale as these ones. So it is not very dark, but it's darker than these ones. That's where this yellow goes. Here we have another color. This one is a little bit more of a subtle color, but it's still easy to tell that this color is blue. So if I ask, okay, what is the hue? Where is it on the rainbow? You could say, well, it doesn't really look like it exactly belongs in the rainbow. It's just not quite rainbow bright, but I can easily tell that it is blue, so that is its hue. And looking at it, I can see that it maybe belongs somewhere in between cyan and blue, but I'm just going to go ahead and call it cyan. Cyan is it's a little bit more towards green in the blue, and it's actually one of the 3 primary colors, which I will mention in just a second. So this one is a muted color. It's not as dull as the ones over on this side. I guess this one is maybe a little bit less dull, but it's not a super bright one, and it is sort of a medium dark. So I would put it maybe even here or here, and there we go. That's where that color belongs. Now, you get colors like this, or even grays, any kind of browns, grays, olive greens, like other kinds of weird greens. They can get a little bit difficult. You can see in my pages that it is true that things that get called green, like blue-green, can have kind of weird greens. Green can have weird greens, but dull yellows, dull yellows also appear green. So it can be very difficult sometimes to tell exactly where green belongs. What you end up being able to see is that, wow, this green looks so much more yellow than this green, even though it's just as dull and maybe just as dark. I might even say that this is not even very dull. I might even say that it belongs here. This is just a very dark yellow. It's a dark, muted yellow, and that's what yellow looks like when it's dark and muted. Kind of very strange, I get it. I might even call this one a sort of drab olive, and this is in fact also a yellow. So this is yellow-green, this one's just straight up yellow. This, what I might call brown, it's called Copper Mountain. Just in comparison, I can see that it is definitely more yellow or orangish than this yellow. So I'm moving it over into possibly yellow-orange or maybe even just orange. Yeah, I think it belongs in orange. It is a dull color. What browns are is just dull, warm colors. And so I'm going to put it in here. It looks like in terms of value, it's not as pale as this one. It's not as dark as this one, so I'm putting it in here. My color collection is, sort of according to my assumption, so, I get to decide. One of the reasons I like this plastic sleeve thing is because I change my mind sometimes. I just change my mind. I think this is darker. I put that in the darker one. So you can see by flipping through this that colors that might get called a brown tend to be warm reds that are dark and or dull, oranges that are dark and or dull, yellow oranges that are dark and or dull. Dark and or dull yellows might look brown or weird greens, and yellow greens, greens and blue greens, when they're dark or dull, they look like sort of murky greens or maybe even slate grays. So blue greens, cyan, blue, maybe even violet, when they're dark or dull, they tend to be more of a gray. There are 3 primary colors. The primary colors, just believe me for now, and if you want an explanation of why these are the primary colors, take my class. But the 3 primary colors are magenta, yellow, and cyan. There's also warm and cool colors. The warm and cool colors are everything from red, orange, and yellow to possibly even yellow-green might be considered a warm color. Green is a neutral color. And then maybe starting at blue, green, cyan, blue, and maybe you might even consider violet a cool color. Purple is a neutral color. So that's warm and cool. Now in terms of popping, if you want to make art where a color pops, there are several things that make a color pop. Number 1 is primary colors pop. So magentas, yellows, and cyans are going to pop, especially if they are pale and bright. So the colors that are in this corner right here, pale and bright, are going to be the poppiest colors you can get. And if you want a color that is not so pale or not so bright to pop, make the background darker and duller than the color that you want to pop. And if you have everything else kept equal, warm colors tend to pop against cool colors. So like yellows might pop against cool blues. Now that's everything being equal. A dull, dark yellow is not going to pop against a bright pale blue. A bright pale blue is going to pop because it's bright and pale. So that is a little review of color theory. Hope it was helpful. Bye-bye!